чую, чую. Та ми чуємо, тільки шкрипить. Чуємо. Та чуємо ж ми. Та я ж відповідаю усім. Да. Може, в мене я не буду не працювати.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the press, we welcome you at this press conference following the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv that gathered 42 leaders. And please welcome President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskiy, President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, President of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs, President of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, Prime Minister of Estonia, Kristen Michal, Prime Minister of Iceland, Kristrún Frostadóttir, Prime Minister of Norway, Jonas Gahr Støre, Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sánchez, Prime Minister of Sweden, Ulf Kristersson. So we will begin without opening remarks. I think that's the greatest show of unity and freedom in this city, that we have certain leaders speaking to the press together. And let's start without further delay by going to, we have Euronews with us, right? Okay, I see it, in the middle. So please everyone stand up when you ask your questions, get the microphone and go on.
Hello, can you... On? Can you hear me? Yes. Hello, everybody. My question is addressed to President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. You have spent the last 3 years building an unprecedented sanctions regime against Russia, really, and you have promised time and time again to make Russia pay for its aggression. But now the United States is asking Europe to leave sanctions as part of a potential peace agreement. In fact, the US is saying that Europe will be invited to the table only when it comes to sanctions relief. Are you willing to do that just because the White House tells you so? And what demands are you going to impose on the Kremlin to do that? And just a quick question for President Zelensky. Do you think Russia deserves any sort of relief after the untold devastation it has brought upon your country? Thank you so much.
So what the sanctions questions is concerned, what we see is that the sanctions already have a massive effect on the Russian economy. There are skyrocketing inflation, there is spiraling interest rates, so the effect is visible. Companies are leaving Russia. You see they are really grinding sanctions and biting sanctions. These sanctions are part of our approach that we want peace through strength. And it's very clear that unless Russia demonstrates by facts the true willingness to achieve a lasting and just peace agreement, we will increase punitive sanctions against Russia. So the precondition is first we have to see that there's action on the side of Russia towards a just and lasting peace agreement. Presently, there is no lasting peace agreement, so that it's much too early to speak about anything of potentially maintaining or increasing or lifting sanctions. This discussion can only be led after we've seen concrete steps on the Russian side.
You know, well, we are very often, and also today we speak that we need just and lasting peace. And when we speak about the just, and this war, it's difficult to find just in this war because of such steps of Russia. Their war, their way of this war, how many people they killed, just killed, and thousands in the prison, and stolen children. And that's why we'll never forget it, and we can't forget it. And even if I hope that our partners on the same page with us, and not only hope, I see it, but we'll never forget it, and we will really do everything that people who began this war, who unprovoked war, all these people, yes, really will answer, and of course we will work on tribunal even after the hard part of this war. Even when we will go to the diplomacy, we'll never forget these surnames and these people.
Let's now go to Italian media. La Stampa, you're with us. Yeah, I see you. Go on.
Thank you very much. Marco Bresolin, Italian newspaper La Stampa. I have a question for President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. You represent 27 EU member states. You said, you repeated that EU wants to be at the table when peace talks will start. You also said that maybe you are going to find someone who will represent the EU. But here there are many other representatives of other European non-EU countries. Some others intervene by video. Do you think that this seat should belong to the EU, or are you ready to share a common seat with other European leaders in order to bring a European position at the peace talks negotiation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, only Ukraine can decide when there are conditions to start effective, credible and sustainable peace negotiations. All of us welcome the huge efforts from President Trump to push Putin and Russia to negotiation, and I wish that these bilateral talks open the door for a really peace negotiation. But only Ukraine can decide when we have conditions to do this. But this war is not only about Ukraine, it's also about European security. And for this it is essential that Europe, as present in the negotiations and participate in negotiations. Not only the European Union, also our friends like Norway, Iceland, United Kingdom, because all of them are very engaged in the support of Ukraine, and they are very concerned about European security. Then I believe that if we reach to have a joint special envoy representing not only the European Union but also the other European countries, we strengthen our European position, and we will discuss this in the next European Council on the 6th of March that I yesterday invited the leaders to participate. And this special European Council is about how to strengthen our capacity to invest more, better, faster and stronger in our own capabilities, how to strengthen the Ukrainian capacity, but also how we can be prepared for participate actively in the future peace negotiations if and when they arrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one to Danish media, Mathilde Kimmer from the R. Yeah.
Yes. My question is to the Danish Prime Minister. Today you presented this willingness to support the Scandinavian and the Baltic countries to support a newly established brigade, Ukrainian brigade. But where are you on the question of boots on the ground in a potential European peacekeeping mission?
Thank you for that question. Well, from a Danish perspective, we are open-minded, and as I have said from the beginning of this war, we will be with our friends in Ukraine as long as it takes and to the end. I think for now, the most important thing is to ensure that Ukraine will get what they need on the ground. And therefore, I urge everyone to contribute more on donations, weapons, air defense, things we have discussed for several months and years now. I think that's the most important thing. And of course, a lot of questions has to be, answered before we can take a concrete solution when it comes to boots on the ground. And as Antonio Costa just said, this war is about Ukraine and it's also about European security. And therefore we need to look at the entire eastern flank when it comes to deterrence and defense. But we are open-minded.
Thank you. Delphi Media, Herman Kelomis. Delphi, yeah.
Hello, Herman Kelomis from Delphi in Estonia. In my country, it is a day with a double meaning. We have our Independence Day, so my question is to President Zelensky and Prime Minister Michal. Should there be an unjust peace in Ukraine? Do you think Estonia's independence could be threatened, and how soon?
Thank you.
It's your birthday, you start.
Yeah, it's Estonia's birthday today, 107. The short answer probably would be that all of EU and NATO are under threat if Russia's and Putin's goals and objectives will not be changed. Longer one probably is that Estonia knows its neighbor well, as everybody does. We have invested in defense for many years, and we will. Our aim is to go to 5% of GDP. Next year it's probably near 4 already. And we know that independence is invaluable. That's why I'm here, not in Estonia celebrating Estonia's birthday, to support Ukraine, because we have the common enemy and common fight. Ukraine is fighting the fight also for Europe and Nordics and Baltics, everybody. So to answer the question, the unjust peace probably would hit everybody, also United States, because Iran, North Korea, everybody would assess that they can do whatever they want. So everybody in this probably are together. And the EU and everybody, just a thought that if you count the men who bear arms in Russia right now, if the war would end right now, there are more than it was before the war. What will they do? Will they become physical education teachers? Probably not. They will find new jobs. So this is a threat all over the world. Before the war, it was called Wagner, whatever they were called. But right now, it's somewhat different. So to conclude, European Union, NATO, everybody in civilized and democratic world are under the threat until Russia is forced to change its goals. Thank you.
Again, my congratulations to you, your country, your people. We are very proud that today you are here in such a special day. Thank you so much, and my congratulations, and God bless. You'll never have a war. And what is very important, I think in risk, answering your question, yes, all the countries which been before 1990, 1991, which been under Russian influence. Yeah, so I think Russia, first of all, wants to have their influence continue it and be present on these territories of on these independent countries, which been before, during Soviet period, being the republics of Soviet Union, and of course it's Ukraine and Moldova, and of course Estonia, Litva, Latvia, and of course where their influence was very strong during the 20th centuries, it's Poland, it's Slovak, and other countries. So the most dangerous moment when you have people who has Russian roots, it's not bad. I'm just how it was with Crimea. I'm just sharing with you our experience. When you have some society, and of course, if you are bordering with Russia, you have such society. I mean, it's with other nations, it's the same. So when you have Russian-speaking people, or their roots, or their families, which half of Estonian, half Russian, like we had Ukrainian, father Ukrainian, and Russian mother, it can be so. It's our history very long. I mean, you are in risk, because it was with Crimea, it was with the East, with Donbass at the very beginning. They said that they are not occupying our territories, that they defend Russian-speaking people. That's why I think that Estonian people have these risks if we will fall down, Ukrainian. I think all such countries who I mentioned, I think have this risk because of Russian policy. because their view of the world, Russian world.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we now go to Iceland. Dagny Erlendsdottir from Iceland National Broadcaster. Yes.
Thank you. I have a question for the Prime Minister of Iceland, Kristrún Frostadóttir. Your government has decided to increase funding to help Ukraine. On what projects will that be spent?
Thank you. Yeah, so this is, we're obviously very much aware of our geographical situation in the world. And even though we might be a small country, we think it's very important that we show through direct action, not just with words, that we're stepping up. We are a country without a military, but we are a country that has high welfare because we have security. And I think there's increased understanding that defense for peace in Europe is extremely important. So we're making this step of doubling our contributions when it comes to defense for Ukraine. And our hope is that we will mostly use these funds to go through the Danish initiative, which we know has been very effective, both financially and for the Ukraine, but also through our demining efforts that we've worked on with Lithuania. So that will be our chief focus. But then we are also obviously supporters through the MB8 of the brigade. We don't have arms or a military, but we will be financially supporting that. So this is an important step for Iceland to take, and like I said before, important to show solidarity with Ukraine.
Thank you, Excellency. Let's go now to Canada. Marie-Ève Bédard from Radio Canada.
Hi, good afternoon. If you'll indulge me 1 second, je vais commencer en français. Monsieur le Premier ministre, avec vous, vous avez parlé plus tôt ce matin de la volonté du Canada de collaborer avec les partenaires européens dans le cas où la paix sera atteinte. Est-ce que ça veut dire pour vous des soldats? I'll translate very quickly. Did you mean this morning that Canada was willing to send boots on the ground should there be peace to cooperate with European allies to guarantee Ukraine's security? And if I may, a question for both of you, President Zelensky and Prime Minister Trudeau. How significant and important is it to have a North American ally at this table now, given the fact that in the past month, both of you have had conversations that sounded like they came from an adversary with the United States and its president, Donald Trump? What's the significance of Canada's presence here today?
Well, first of all, Canada has been there for Ukraine from day one, indeed from before day one, as in 2015 we started training Ukrainian military forces on the ground in Ukraine, which was a significant part. Western training to the Ukrainian armed forces is one of the reasons why Ukraine has been able to stand up to the Russian invaders so effectively over the past years. It's not just Canada, a number of countries have been involved. But for historical reasons, Canada having the second largest diaspora of Ukrainians in the world means that we felt deeply connected to Ukraine, but we also believe deeply that it's not just about Ukraine. It's about the rules and the values and the principles of sovereignty, of independence, of territorial integrity that protects every country in the world. All of us rely on those rules to be able to build peace and security. And we know that with the world changing, we're all going to have to do more around peace and security. One of the key themes that we heard today, as we've heard from many, many partners around the world in NATO and elsewhere over the past number of years, is people are going to be doing more on defense. 9.5 years ago when I took office in Canada, the previous government had us down below 1% of defense spending, even though the NATO 2% pledge had been made a year or two before. In the subsequent time, we have more than tripled defense spending on the path to 2030, and we're on our way to 2%. And we know we're going to have to continue to do more and more in an uncertain world, and Canada will be there. As to how we will be there, we will work with our neighbors on it, but everything is on the table because we need to make sure that might no longer makes right in this world. That's what has led to 80 years of incredible stability and prosperity, not just in Europe, but around the world, because of the institutions we built out of the ashes of World War II. And standing up for those institutions is in the best interest of every single one of us. Now, as a collection of different nations, we will have different perspectives from time to time on the best way forward, and those will be worked out in forums like this or at the G7 forum or elsewhere. But we are united in our values. We are united in wanting to see peace and fairness and prosperity for all our citizens, and that's what continues to drive us forward. Le Canada va toujours être là pour l'Ukraine. On est là depuis les débuts. On va continuer de l'être et on regardera comment on peut mieux aider dans les années à venir, parce que défendre l'Ukraine, c'est pas juste défendre l'Ukraine, c'est défendre les principes et les valeurs qui nous protègent tous.
Merci à vous. Victor Guerrero, Televisión Española. Sorry.
No,
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Really, with pleasure.
That's okay. No, he can tell us how much he likes Canada. Because
I love Canada. And I really appreciate that we have such relations with you, Justin. And you helped a lot, and a lot of your people helped us at the very beginning of war. We never shared, by the way, that we've been in touch, and really at the very beginning of the war, we didn't have really huge technologies with drones and etc. When we began to produce drones, and even when we bought drones with some partners, they didn't have Canadian high-level optic technologies, and Canada helped us with this, and we spoke a lot of this, and we had this, and we began to helped our guys on the front line, on the battlefield, with these drones and etc. It was really first weeks and first months of the first year of war. Then, Justin, absolutely right about training missions. Really, the part of our army was prepared by Canadian officers, instructors. But what is very important, and it was very important again the first year, because they've been well trained. For today, the situation changed. After that, after Canada, we had such missions in Europe, in different countries, and then so the experience of this war gave us new knowledge of the war, and of course today when we trained abroad, we have to come back and train again on the battlefield, because the war is changing. It's technological war. That's why. But we really appreciate for your help and packages, military packages. So thank you so much. And I think that's all, yes?
Well, with regards to Donald Trump and having a partner and partner here.
With Donald Trump? This is, by the way, this is a question to you, to Canada. And, I mean, that's well, with Donald Trump. Now we had a conversation. It was very good conversation, G7 conversation with the leading role of Canada. Yes, thank you very much, Justin, for organizing this meeting. Everybody been there, and we spoke about it, and we hope that United States will continue support, like all the partners. All the partners do it, and we need also not to lose this unity between Europe and United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we can proceed to Victor, finally to you. Where is the Spanish media? Yes.
Hola. This is a question for Pedro Sánchez, Spanish Prime Minister, and also for President Zelensky. First in Spanish, then I will translate in English. Señor Presidente, usted esta mañana decía que España va a apoyar a Ucrania el tiempo que haga falta y con mayor determinación. España, su gobierno, está valorando o podría valorar enviar soldados dentro de una fuerza de paz o en otro formato. Prime Minister, you said this morning that Spain would be supporting Ukraine as long as it takes and with more determination. Is the Spanish government considering or could consider it to send Spanish soldiers as a peacekeeping force in Ukraine? And for President Zelensky, are you asking your partners here present for soldiers, for a peacekeeping force as a peace guarantee for the future, and how many soldiers do you think would be right for this work? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Victor, for your question. I would say, because this is not the first time that I have to answer to this question, and I guess all the rest of colleagues, but I would say that first things first, and step by step. No, I think that now we're focused on what we are, which is to open a genuine peace negotiations talks. And for that is crucial, I would say critical, that Ukraine and of course Europe are implicated in the negotiation process. Second, I think it's critical for all of us to provide the security guarantees to Ukraine in order to reach that common goal that we have, which is to have a last and just peace for Ukraine and for Europe. So you know, I think these are now the questions that we have to answer, and we welcome, of course, this window of opportunity that now we have in order to speak about peace. But as I said before, I think it's important that to have the European Union and, of course, Ukraine implicated in these very important talks. And as I said during this morning, of course, you know, in 2024, Spain signed a very important bilateral security agreement with Ukraine that will last for the next 10 years. Last year, we provide 1 billion euros in order to provide military capabilities to Ukraine. This is something that we are going to repeat in the year 2025, and of course we are we stand with Ukraine and of course with President Zelensky.
Thank you so much. Well, we're thankful to you, Pedro, your country, your team, and your people. We had, I think, the most difficult moments. 3 winters, blackouts, and etc. Now we're sitting in the middle of the winter. We have light, we have connection, we have internet, we have possibility to speak, and our people have electricity, and we see each other. That's good, very good. But this is the big work of a lot of partners. For example, I don't know if I can share when I came to Spain in a very difficult moment, again in winter, and Pedro made a decision with I don't know if I can say number of hawks, I don't know. Yeah, 6. It was decision I needed very much because we knew that they will attack very specific infrastructure of energy, and we needed very much 10 very quickly. I had to find very quickly 10 systems and through the world, and immediately Pedro gave me 6 hawks, and it helped. So thank you so much. And such things, this is illustration of our unity. And again, it means that we can trust each other and we count on each other, and we are very thankful. And I'm very thankful, like president of our nation, to all your nations, and this is very important. I think the same thing we will discuss. Now it's not for public because we didn't make a decision about the contingents and infrastructure for security guarantees. We are contingents or troops, how you say, or soldiers, like the journalist said. So we will discuss this infrastructure. The number, so of course I know the number what we need, and of course we will share it firstly, not in the open conversation. Yes, not to prepare Russians for this. And so we will discuss, and when we will make decision of what we see, how we see the number, and if it will be positive, we will share it. Of course we will share it. It's not a secret. It can't be without support of societies. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to Swedish media, Svenska Dagbladet. Yeah, we have Swedish media with us. Okay, they probably left. Have not waited until now, yes? Okay, let's go now to Norway then, another Nordic nation. Marius Helge Larsen. Okay, at least we have you.
Hi. I'm Marius Larsen from the Norwegian news agency NTB. I have a question for President Zelensky or anyone else who would like to answer it. You have now been through...
Can you ask Sweden, please, because they don't have journalists.
President Zelensky, Sweden, and anyone else. Okay?
Sweden, Zelensky, or anyone else, or my Prime Minister, who hasn't gotten any questions yet. So, but it goes to you first, President Zelensky. You have been through 3 terrible years of war. What are your hopes for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people for the next 3 years to come?
We hope that we can finish this war this year, not in 3 years. It's very, very difficult. Very difficult for all our nation to go through this war, but with all respect to our soldiers and our people. So I can't speak about 3 years. If we speak about how to prepare security because of the Russia, they can come back in 10 years. If we will not be prepared. They will not come back if we will pressure them, put them to their place, to their territory, and if Ukraine will be in EU and in NATO in closest years, of course it will help us very much. And I think that they will not come back if we will have strong army and strong allies and strong unity, to my mind, because they will never, forgive the world that they didn't win. And you see that they will not win.
Thanks.
Thank you. And what about Sweden?
Yes, you have a question to your Prime Minister or not? If not, we will proceed. No? I think everything was so clear. Okay, yes.
I have a question for my Prime Minister as well, Jonas Gahr Støre. Today, your colleague Mette Frederiksen in Denmark said that 3% of the budget to defense is not enough. You have set a goal to reach 3% within 2036. Do you think that is a fast enough pace?
Well, I think we have made that significant shift of lifting us far above 2%. First, we were among countries that did not have a plan. Then we had a plan, then we moved beyond. We are now about 2.5, and we may reach 3% before 2036, by the way. I think we may need to invest more in defense, and I think that debate should be on figures, but also on quality and capabilities. Because if we get lost in figures, we will have 32 allies with silos and percentages. What we need to do now is to deliver on what we have agreed at NATO, in Vilnius and in Washington about regional plans. So we work now with Sweden and Finland in the north of the Nordic region to make sense of our capabilities in defending the Nordic part of the Nordic region. And we debate with our Danish friends and our German friends and our British friends that around the North Sea we should also have investment in the best capabilities. That may also lift percentage, but I would really like to see the output as the most important.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go now to Finnish media. We have with us Jonas Immonen from Ilta-Sanomat, right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Jonas Immonen from Ilta-Sanomat, Finland. Question for President Stubb and Mr. Zelensky. Mr. Stubb, you said earlier today that there are now mixed messages and signals coming from the US in support of Ukraine and also defense of Europe as a whole. Mr. Stubb, what do you think that's going to be Finnish role and responsibility for future for European defense? And Mr. Zelensky, do you think or believe that Europe will and should be able to replace US support if needed?
Sure. Perhaps I'll answer through 2 points. I'll answer the question to Volodymyr first. I think we need to get our facts right. When you look at support for Ukraine throughout this war, Europe stands, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said earlier, at about 134 billion euros, more or less. The United States, roughly around 114 billion. I look around this table and I see NB8, so 5 Nordic countries and 3 Baltic states. We're actually at 26 billion euros, roughly speaking. So that's about a fifth of what Europe has supported. So yes, to a certain extent in the future, we're going to have to take more responsibility, but to get bogged down in who has given more, I think is the wrong tack. The second point I have to make, it's not only about the material support, it's also about having skin in the game or having some kind of a plan. I think Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre put it quite well earlier when he said that we Europeans can't complain our way to the negotiating table. And my worry is that in the past 2 weeks, when we've seen a shift in the transatlantic partnership, and you'll know that I'm an avid transatlanticist, we have to wake up to a new reality. And then the question is, how do we get skin in the game? How do we get involved? I think a good start is what President Costa has done, is to call a European Council. Because right now, European diplomacy is rather cacophonic. It's all over the place. That's why I have, together with some colleagues, proposed that we sit down and think about a plan. And in my mind, that plan or sketch goes in 3 phases. The first phase is the pre-negotiation. That's where we are right now. This is when we have to think really hard how we put more pressure on Russia and basically how we support Volodymyr and Ukraine and what kind of security arrangements we have. And if I may, just as a side note, I'm getting a little bit frustrated about this debate on boots on the ground, because that sort of misses the whole point. That is that the strongest boots on the ground in the world right now are with Ukraine. They have the land forces. Then it's a question about which phase and how Europe will come to support Ukraine. In the air, in the sea, with reconnaissance, with intelligence, etc., etc. The second phase of the plan is when the ceasefire begins. And that's actually quite crucial, because that's when you start looking at the modalities and the agenda of the actual negotiations. And that's when you start looking at confidence-building measures. And then the third phase is the peace process. And that's when you start talking about the big issues of territory, and that's when you start talking basically about recompensation, about justice, which President Zelensky was talking about earlier. So what I'm trying to say is that I think we in Europe, we need to get our act together. And in order to get an act together, you have to have a plan to the Americans, because if you don't have a plan to the Americans, you're not going to get involved in negotiations. And right now the negotiations are happening above our heads without any kind of a plan and strategy. That's why I think this meeting has been extremely important, and that's why I think that the next 2 weeks are crucial also about the future of European security.
And there was another, yeah.
Just to add some words, I think that you are sorry that I'm telling this, but I think that you are neighboring the same problem. Yes, and that's great. So that's big success that you are in NATO. And my congratulations to Sweden. And also, that's why, so we are very thankful that we have such close partnership with Finland, with Alexander. And of course, you gave us a lot of packages during this war. And it was very important, useful. I can tell you, especially, by the way, first year, I'm focusing a lot of times on the first year, but I think that the first months was the most important. The most important in this battle. And when those times we didn't have 155 artillery, I mean Western kind of NATO standard systems of artillery. We didn't have long distance weapon and etc. We had Ukrainian production, Soviet period production, any weapon, artillery and etc. and air defense, S-300, for example, missiles. And it was very difficult. It was big deficit because it's big deficit in the world. And Finland helped us very much, because really we found only some countries who had it in the storages. Yeah, so it was very important, especially those months, those first weeks and months. And about your neighbor, and I think, and of course, Ukraine will be always thankful for this and never forget it. And I think those experience of such enemies or such problematic neighboring, how to save the border, and you have very long border with Russia, and that's why I think our experience of how to defend the contact line or defend the front line, and the same technologies how to defend the border. I think this experience, our experience, will be very useful for your country. It doesn't mean that you will have a war, but it's more safety. I think so.
Thank you. I was told we have another question to Prime Minister Christensen from Ukrinform. Yes, the floor is yours.
Тетяна Пасова, Укрінформ. Запитання до прем'єр-міністра Швеції і до президента України. Скажіть, будь ласка, зараз активно...
Ще секундочку тільки візьмуть так. Будь ласка.
I can put my question in English, actually. Today, President Nauseda stepped with the initiative for Ukraine to become a member of EU by 1st of January of 2030. And do you support such initiative? Because we need a coalition of leaders who will support our way for EU. And і запитання до президента Зеленського. Пане президенте, скажіть, будь ласка, чи готова Україна ще більше пришвидшити реформи заради євроінтеграції?
Was that for me? Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, obviously we have we have the phrase of a merit-based process, and since there are a lot of merits, there is a good reason for speediness in the process. So that's very easy, and I really wouldn't mind to have a very specific date. I think there is an urgency in becoming a European Union member, and even more so if there is put at doubt whether Ukraine will be allowed into NATO for every country. So I think the European Union accession is a urgent need.
I think so that how to open clusters quickly on the way to EU and what we have to do for this. I think all the answers can give you really the President Ursula von der Leyen. She knows when she and President Costa, I think they know when we will be in EU. Really? No pressure. They are decision makers. So.
Yeah, but perhaps I may add, I am now witnessing many different accession processes. I must say, I'm so deeply impressed by the speed and the quality with which this country, Ukraine, is reforming and doing all the necessary steps, and these are hard steps, and this is a lot of hard work, while fighting a war of survival is really impressive. So you have here an example for highest merit, highest quality, and speedy delivery that is exemplary.
You got 3. So now we go to Latvia. Latvian media, Latvian television. Gins Amoliņš.
Thanks. Hello? Works well. So the Nordic and the Baltic states, my question would be to President of Latvia, President Rinkevič, and maybe a short comment on that from President Zelensky, if possible, shortly about the Nordics and Baltics announced today, the pledge to train and also to equip a brigade-sized unit. Given the uncertain situation right now in geopolitics, and a bit of a follow-up on the Finnish colleague here, do you see that Europe would need to rapidly increase its military aid to Ukraine? And is Europe capable of doing that? Thank you.
Actually, those are very easy questions. Yes and yes. But I think that for the second, what we really need is to first of all, get a very clear message to the defense industry that we are going to spend more, because what defense industry needs a clear commitment. Number two, both on the national level, less at the European level, we still are experiencing all those procedures. Sorry to say, but I think that we need to get out of this kind of mood that we are very much process-oriented, but to move to the results-oriented. I do believe that we can do that, and I do believe that we must do that, and I do believe that we will do that.
Okay, let's go now to listen.
I think so that all the defense or military industries of European countries began to increase the production because of this war. Began to increase the production, beginning from the artillery rounds to drone production, technologies, systems of electronic warfare, a lot of things, different things. But how to do, but it's not enough, and how to increase more quicker and be comparable with Russians is to invest more to Ukrainian production. Because our economy, we have military economy for today. We just produce, for example, like drones. We have 200 private companies. 200, it's a lot. Even small companies, they need financing, and they produce quicker than our government production. It's understandable, because without any bureaucracy, they just produce and help soldiers. And by the way, they help directly to the front line. What is important, they don't produce and just to give government, and then government think how to send it to the front line. So there are a lot of quick ways. For example, we did one thing. So I began to pay money directly to brigades. It's one of the versions, how to help them to produce quickly. And they really do a lot of things. And they buy and produce. There are brigades on the front line which produce at the same time. So really very sorry if I'm using not correct word, interesting, but it's incredible. So that's why we need additional financing for our Ukrainian production directly to private sector.
Now to Lithuanian media, LRT, Augustinas. Yeah.
Thank you for opportunity. Question for Lithuanian President. I also would like to ask you about, peacekeeping force possibilities in Ukraine. We see that it's hardly likely that anytime soon we can see this coming from EU or NATO frame. Are you willing to take a unilateral decision, like, for example, United Kingdom is talking about? And also I want to ask President Zelensky, looking around you today, around this table, do you think that this Nordic-Baltic region is playing more and more significant role in support for Ukraine? Thanks.
Lithuania is ready and will be ready to support Ukraine under any circumstances. And even now, as we speak, Lithuanian people, ordinary Lithuanian people, are accumulating financial resources in order to buy the drones for Ukraine. So my country is not tired and will be not tired in supporting Ukraine. When it comes to the decision you mentioned, I think we have to answer to the three questions, first of all. We need the clarity about the mandate of such forces on the soil of Ukraine. Are we speaking of peacekeeping or peace enforcement? There is no peace yet, and even the ceasefire is not a reality, unfortunately, so far. The second question, and the answer to the second question is, are we ready to enforce the ceasefire? So the force must be real. The first time the peace is violated or ceasefire is violated, the retaliation must be immediate and strong. Otherwise, we compromise and we discredit the very concept of the security guarantees. And the third question is, are we ready to back each other? Or, in other words, unity is vital. Europeans with the backing of the United States would be ideal solution. Are we there? I have my doubts. Maybe my doubts will disappear in the coming weeks or coming months. At least I am looking forward to the Hague summit. I hope there will be positive news from this summit, despite all our reservations. So I think the question is a little bit too premature, but when it comes to the training mission, Lithuania is already there. Our experts, military experts, assist Ukrainians to improve their professionalism and fighting capacities. They are there, and we already answered to this question positively. And if you allow me, I will comment my initiative on the date of European Union accession, Ukraine's accession into European Union. You know, this is a matter of political commitment. If we talk about the NATO membership, of course we understand that not everything is in our hands, and the decision depends on other allies too. But the European membership is in our hands, in the hands of European Commission, in the hands of member state, and of course the hands of Ukraine. And Ukraine is doing really a great job under such complicated circumstances. So I truly believe that it is a realistic date. It's ambitious, but realistic date. Thank you.
One more important partner with us, France, Monsieur le Ministre Benjamin Haddad, Minister Delegate for Europe and Special Envoy of the President. I'm told we have a question for you coming from Union Sayenko.
Thank you for this opportunity to ask a question. I would like to refer my question to French Minister. France has already provided Ukraine with very significant support in order to help to survive our country. Especially you provided us Scalp long-range missiles, howitzers called Caesar, armored fighting vehicles, ammunition, and other vital support. And my question is your country ready to continue support Ukraine for another year? Are you ready to increase this level of support? And my quick follow-up for the President of European Commission and President of European Council. You have already heard proposal from Lithuanian President that there should be setting a date for Ukrainian accession by the 1st January 2030. Is this a goal of your mandate to coordinate and help Ukraine really become a member of European Union by this date, 1st of January 2030? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, France will continue to support Ukraine for how long it takes, for the simple reason that Ukrainians are not just fighting for their security and their freedom, but for the security of Europeans against the threat that Russia poses for all of us. You were kind enough to mention long-range missiles, the Caesar cannons. We have the first Mirage jets now flying in the skies of Ukraine, as well as the Anne of Kyiv brigade that's been deployed on the ground, and we will continue to do so. President Macron, as you know, is today in Washington, D.C. to continue the respectful and honest dialogue that he has with President Trump, to say that, very simply, we support the peace through strength approach. And for this to succeed, we need to continue to support Ukraine on the ground. We need to increase pressure on Russia, and this is why we welcome the adoption of the 16th round of sanctions today on Russia, that Ukrainians need to be around the table when their security is being discussed. Europeans need to be around the table, and that there can be no just and lasting peace without robust security guarantees in the long run. And this is where also Europeans will have to step up and take their responsibility. And France is ready in this respect to continue to take its responsibility alongside its partners for the security of Ukraine, the security of all of us.
So to your question concerning the initiative of President Gitanas Nausėda, I think it's a very noble initiative because it shows a lot of political will and an amazing support to Ukraine. and thank you very much for that. The process of accession, we always repeat, is merits-based. Basically, it says there are certain conditions and reforms that you have to do, and you have to implement them so that the conditions are right for an accession. And it's good for the European Union, and it's good for the accessing country. So that is always necessary. What I want to emphasize is that if you would just only set a date, then it would also mean the other candidate countries would ask immediately for a date and not a process anymore. But again, I really appreciate the political will that is there. I would even say Ukraine, merits-based process, if they continue at that speed and at that quality, perhaps they could be earlier than 2030. So thank you very much for giving the impulse, and let's work hard on all sides really to keep the momentum up.
We're almost out of time, but we have one more question for President Zelensky.
Sorry, if you allow me.
I'm sorry, President.
For sure, Ukraine's accession to the European Union will be the most important security guarantee for the future of Ukraine. And we have already decided that this new institutional cycle will be the institutional cycle of enlargement to Ukraine, to Moldova, to Western Balkans, and we don't know, with Georgia. It's a merit-based process, and we are working hard from the European Commission to the different candidate states. And it's very impressive what Ukraine is making. Because in fact, Ukraine are writing a new playbook how to make reforms at war times. And this is very difficult to imagine. But we are very committed, and I'm sure that the different member states, the European Commission, and Ukraine, Moldova, the Western Balkan countries are working very hard to deliver on this enlargement. And we need also to work among us to make the necessary reforms to welcome well these new member states.
El Confidencial, Fermín Torrano. While I was coming here, I met just in the street a Ukrainian friend who told me to say thank you for the €1 billion you announced today. And when I said goodbye to him, a question came to my mind, like, how will you explain to these Ukrainian citizens and other Ukrainian citizens, and also to the Spanish taxpayers, that Spain still this year, last year, 2022, is paying more, 2 times, is paying €2 billion to Russia buying liquefied gas, and today we are only announced 1 billion to Ukraine. And so I would like to ask you, what will you tell to him, to the Spanish taxpayers, because this money is still helping to fund the war? And to President Zelensky, I would like to ask that you said trust with partners is very important. So I would like to know, how do you feel with partners that still pays money, a lot of money, more money than they give to you, to the enemy, or partially at least? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the questions. First of all, Spain has supported all the sanctions packages approved by the Council. And we've been very constructive and positive in order to increase the pressure on Russian shoulders in order to stop the war. Second, you're talking about private contracts, but the political will of the Spanish government, and I would say the Spanish society, is to reduce and diversify our energy dependencies towards other countries. And we have done so. We have done so. Our main provider is now in North America, not only the US, but also Canada. And last but not least, I would say that that we have committed ourselves as Spanish government to devote €1 billion for the next 10 years, each year, in order to provide that military capabilities to Ukraine. So, you know, we are supporting Ukraine, we are supporting President Zelensky and his government, and I do believe that even if we're far away from the front line, because we are coming from the Iberian Peninsula, we have also a good representation of the Iberian Peninsula with the President of the Council, Antonio Costa, and myself. I think that people in our society understand quite well the importance of defending and providing this support to Ukraine and its people in order to guarantee that peace and security in Ukraine and in Europe. And by the way, you know, when it comes to enlargement, since we come from a country which became a member state of the European Union back in the 80s of the 20th century, we're always open and very constructive in the approach of the enlargement of Ukraine, Moldova, and Western Balkans. So, you know, I think that, and this is not because it's the political will of the government, it's the political will of the Spanish society, which really feel that solidarity before, when we were, you know, with some problems, and nowadays, when other countries, such as Ukraine, need that solidarity. And I'm also very happy that we agreed with President Zelensky to open a Ukrainian hub in Spain, since we are the fourth largest country in the European Union receiving Ukrainian refugees in our country, to provide that services not only from the Spanish government but also from the Ukrainian government.
Okay, and one last one to wrap up from the Ukrainian media to Ukrainian president. 1+1, прошу, слово вам.
Пане президенте, ви не раз говорили про те, що Росія насправді абсолютно не прагне миру, і, власне, в підтвердження цих слів сьогодні маємо картину, коли тут об'єднаний світ збирається для того, щоб поговорити про мир, поговорити про домовленості, вирішити нагальну проблему. Росіяни в обличчі Лаврова говорять про те, що ми не проти, щоб Європа була на перемовинах, проте ми все одно не припинимо вогонь, якщо не задовольнять все, що хочемо ми. Тобто позиція у них конкретна. Ви сьогодні згадали і сказали про те, що хочете, аби до кінця року ми мали мир. В зв'язку з такою позицією росіян, взагалі, наскільки вірогідна перспектива такого швидкого миру, хоча б до кінця року, ми не говоримо про тижні. І дуже часто минулого тижня звучала фраза про те, що треба йти на поступки. Для України яка межа між поступками і яка межа між примусом до миру, який може бути зрадою, як сьогодні зауважив ваш чеський колега? Дякую.
Дякую за запитання. Ну, це ж не перший ультиматум Російської Федерації. Я, якщо чесно, навіть не чув, або, ну, ті самі слова ми чуємо там кожного тижня. Нічого нового немає. Всьому треба робити своє, треба посилювати себе, посилювати розуміння, що ми можемо зробити в Європі, збільшувати виробництво, посилювати нашу армію, домовлятися з партнерами, безумовно, це без Росії, домовлятися з партнерами про гарантії безпеки для України, тобто бути готовими до всього. І паралельно робити все, щоб дипломатичний трек, про який говорять і в Європі, і в Сполучених Штатах Америки, напевне, бачити щось, якісь можливості в цьому треці, але не порушуючи Конституції нашої держави і не порушуючи інтересів українців і всіх європейців. Да, і тому тут про це можна дуже багато і довго говорити. Давайте, незважаючи на те, які ультиматуми звучатимуть з російської території, давайте робити своє. Мені здається, поки у нас є такі сильні партнери, ми не наодинці проти них, я думаю, у нас все вийде. Дякую.
Дякую, пане президенте. And thank you, distinguished leaders. Thank you, press. At this we conclude. Thank you so much.